The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host. And today on Planted, I'm joined by someone who has been shaping the cannabis gene pool one cultivar at a time, James Loud. Whether you're a grower, a curious consumer, or just love nerding out on plant science, we're going to have a fascinating ride today. So, James, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. It's been a long time coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me on your show.
Yeah,
I'm excited to be here.
Last year I had so much fun being on your show, and we've been meaning to get together. And we've had some fun times running into each other at Barcelona and doing the Tabadoo. There's been just so many good times. Before we get into everything, what was your first cannabis experience?
Smoking out of a can at 14 years old. And, you know, it's so funny because we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. And it's really been a topic of conversation lately on why we smoke cannabis. And I think if we really go back, it's because of the way it makes us feel.
Yeah.
And I think there's a different agenda being pushed on us right now that I think more of it's like, oh, it's similar to alcohol or tobacco. And it's so much different. For us, it was like it made us feel a different way. And, I think it heals people. It does so many great things. But really, I got started as a young adult, 14-year-old. You're not even an adult yet. But I really was drawn to it. And we enjoyed it in high school. It was like before high school, during high school, after class. And then try not to smell by the time our parents got home. That was the big thing, but we didn't have strain names all the time. It was usually green or brown. And, there was seeds in the brown stuff. This is in 1991. And so I got to enjoy cannabis as it evolved through the different stages that we've seen over the last, 35 years. And it's really come full circle for me. And then being a part of it as I am now, I feel like my 18-year-old self would be super stoked.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned that. I was just talking to Ellen Holland yesterday. She lives around the corner, and she came over and we were smoking some beautiful hash in the front yard, and we looked at each other and it's like, what would your teenage self think of the fact of like the work that you're doing? And we were both like, I think they'd be pretty happy. It's like, you get paid to do what?
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Well, I knew I wanted to be involved with the plant in some way, shape, or form. I've loved it my whole life, ever since I first got to experience it. And, it does so many great things for me and allows me, it's allowed me to have a career that, otherwise I'd be doing something else. I also cook and I do other things, but, I love being able to do what I do in the time that we're doing it. And I'm so blessed. And I have I try to live in gratitude for everything anyway, but like really, to be able to do what we're doing right now in this day and age with the technology, what are the odds, that we could be doing podcasts together and really elevating the plant. I feel like we're stewards of this plant as it is. It's like, it's elevating us, but really we're trying to push it forward in our own ways.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, some of that, it's like being a steward of the plant. There's, I think that Ed Rosenthal said this, but I could be wrong because I'm getting older, my memory's going. But I believe that Ed coined the term Cannabisaurus Rex. When people get more about how they look in the work that they're doing rather than the work itself. And right. I'm not patting myself on the back about this, but I think you and I have had lots of conversations, and the work that we do, I think we both acknowledge is so much bigger than you and me.
Well, yeah, and I live for that kind of stuff. I live for experiences. I think my life is all about collecting experiences, and part of being able to go through all this is just, it's so amazing that we can have this experience and we can help elevate a plant. And it's so much bigger than any one of us individually. And together we're extremely powerful.
Yeah.
Right? And we have by ourselves, we're limited in what we can do, but together as a group, it's like, even with podcasts, my podcast, if I was just talking to people How exciting would that be? But I'm able to have guests on, just like yourself. We have these guests on, and these guests are really what make the podcast and really what make it interesting. And it's this diverse, this diverse story that's being told, that we all can talk about this plant, but there's all these different experiences and perspectives of things that we've gone through with this plant. And it really paints this whole, I feel like, in many regards, you're doing the Lord's work and you're doing something really special because we're the storytellers of the future. Before, history was told by a small group of people, like there's a handful of people telling the whole story. Now we have a huge group of people. So the population of people that are telling the story is so much bigger, and you really get to understand what was going on in 2005, in 2025, in 2024. And, you can go through these podcasts and look at the dates, and really it starts to paint more of a realistic picture of what was going on than the perspective of one individual.
Absolutely. Or even like the national perspective, because there's this narrative that goes, we have it going in cycles, right? I mean, when legalization was really starting to gain speed nationally, we were seeing a lot of people curious, wanting to get in on the action, writing articles. And we went from like people writing articles about cannabis being a panacea for everything to now we're starting to see the tide turn. And there's a lot of clickbait articles that aren't true. Like, as somebody who, has training in research, I know, biases in research are huge. But when you take like people are like, oh, well, research is saying da 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 da, and that's like the headline, shock value. And then you go in and you actually, how many people actually look at the research and it's like, well, actually, it's not saying that. It's saying there are these factors that they may that may come into play, like the one that they just put out about they're saying, cannabis may cause dementia. And all these people were going to the emergency room that later on ended up with dementia. And then there are, people like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then when you look at the research, you're like, well, actually, it could also be self-medication because they're having the onset of dementia symptoms and they're trying to fix it themselves. And as we've seen, there's been earlier research that's actually shown that not only is it good for patients not having to use the dangerous black box formulary for a lot of things with dementia, but we're also seeing research that's showing that cannabinoid therapies actually may help reverse some of the damage of the plaques and the plaques themselves. And so it's kind of like when people are curious about this and they see this shocking, whether it's the clickbait or whether it's the panacea puff pieces, it's like critical thought is really key when we're disseminating what's true and what's not.
100%. And so many people these days just kind of go along with the narrative. And it's like, that's my problem with the parties. It's like we have the Republicans and the Democrats in the United States. And if you're a Republican, that means you're okay with, you're okay with everything on the Republican side. And if you're a Democrat, you're okay. But it's so much more about the individual issues. Like for me, and I have a hard time aligning with either party these days. I see so many flaws on both sides. But I think if we can just address the issues of like homelessness and the economy and really focus on what's important. And there's so much noise and distraction. We really have to get through that to get to the important things. Even with cannabis, I feel like social media is a blessing and a curse. I love social media. I think it's helped elevate my business. It's helped do a lot of great things, but it's taken us away from where we were at the point where like the 215 days you'd go into a dispensary and it was like, how do you want to feel? Or how do you need help? Right. And now it's like, how does it look? How does it smell? And all the way down the list, now we're like 5 or 6 points later. It's like, oh yeah. And how does it make you feel? And I feel like we need to reverse that. And we need to start like, even in breeding, like being a chef, I'm all about flavor. And so for the longest time, I went away from how does it make you feel? It was like, how does it taste? Because it all makes you feel pretty good. But the truth is there's so many different types of effects, but we keep bottlenecking ourselves into these genetics, right? And social media definitely doesn't help because it all looks beautiful. And some of the best flower that has the best effect, it doesn't necessarily look amazing. Well, I grew up on cat piss. That was the thing that I wanted when I was a kid that I absolutely loved was cat piss. And we used to buy $60 eighths of it and it was shreds in a bag. And it was ugly weed. It was stuff that most people would be like, oh, you should throw that away. That doesn't, like, nowadays people would be like, what the fuck is that? Unless you're Dave from Budgelero or Tony from Budgelero and you're going these long flowering varieties. I just interviewed Tony. It's like he was the one. He's like the interview of interviews. If you have a chance to interview him, he's amazing. He grows long flowering varieties. Another guy who's doing the Lord's work. It's like we have so many people that want short flowering varieties as short as possible. And there's something to be said about those long flowering varieties and the unique effects of them, and it's like, we need to get back to that conversation, and it took my friend passing away. His name's Dave Mesford, Dave, damn it. And he was a special guy and he really got me back on this path. And, it's funny how, like, I believe that everything happens for a reason. And I believe that there's a bunch of magic that goes on in the world. I see cannabis miracles and miracles happen every day, but sometimes it takes something really bad to happen in your life for you to get back on track with stuff, whether it's weight loss. I lost a bunch of weight actually after that happened. And also breeding for effect now has become more of a priority and a goal to look at first rather than how does it taste? How does it look? And those things are important. Flowering time, all that stuff is important. But we really need as a community to go back. How does it make you feel? Because I feel like a lot of us started in this place where we enjoyed this plant because of the way it made us feel first and foremost. It made us feel different. It healed us. It's this one thing that has so many good uses. And I understand that it's hard for doctors to wrap their head around it because our body chemistries are so uniquely different. There's not a shared experience across the board. But really, we need to look at ourselves. Same thing with medicine. If you're going to the doctor, you really need to be looking at how you can heal yourself. Doctors can only do so much.
Yeah. I mean, you have to report back. I mean, and you're right. Like it's a difficult thing for healthcare professionals to navigate. But every time that they hear from a patient that something's helped them, like when I was going through cancer, teaching my doctors about the experience really helped change their minds about whether they should be supporting people having access or not. And when I was doing trainings with the UCSF pharmacology students, they would ask me, okay, Sarah, patient comes in, they have this condition. What's the ratio? What's the dosage? What are you going to recommend? And I would say to them, that doesn't even work that way in pharmacology. Like you know how the majority of people are going to respond to a certain pharmaceutical. You start them on a certain dosage, you keep track of it, you get the blood work done, and you adjust accordingly.
Well, and these things are so complicated. So my wife has breast cancer. I'm not sure exactly the type, but it's ER positive, HR2 negative. And the type of cancer that she has, she cannot consume cannabis because it can increase your estrogen levels. So with cancer, there's so many different types of cancer. Mm-hmm. It's not just a one size fits all solution with cannabis. Well, it's going to cure your cancer. Yep. And it may cure, it may cure your cancer and it may not. And it's subjective to the individual's body chemistry and also the cannabis type. There's so many different types. We look at chemovars as another subject that we really need to be focusing on because just because it's a specific cultivar doesn't mean it was grown to express that chemical profile that's needed for that drug or for that effect from that drug.
Yeah, that's an important conversation to have. And you're so right. I mean, I used to go to conferences and I would have colleagues that would introduce me as Sarah, the girl who cured her cancer with cannabis. And my mom is a cancer researcher. And I was like, no. There are studies that have shown amazing things with that. I used it for symptom management. And just like there's many different types of chemotherapy for the different types of cancers, you've got different protocols. And like you said, there are certain types of cancers where cannabis is off the table, and your mileage may vary depending on your age.
We literally consulted the best cannabis doctors, cannabis doctors out there. And they were the ones that said, right now, no, it's not the time, for cannabis. And my wife is a cannabis smoker. She's a consumer. She enjoys it. And it's something that she can't enjoy right now till she's going through all her treatments. And there's a long line of treatments. She didn't do chemotherapy. She chose to do the radiation. We looked at the statistics and we have a really good oncologist, one of the best in California, who's actually one of our neighbors. it works out. He lives like 5 houses down from us. And, so like we're trying to take an active, approach at this together. Like she's doing all the work. Believe me, it's a lot of work and it's an uphill battle, but like, and there's a lot to it. I think lifestyle change is so huge. I think diet is so huge. And then a combination of medicine, I think, and there's like, if you just follow the pharmaceutical path, I don't think that's right either. I think you have to look at it like, how can I heal from the inside out too, without medication? And if there was no medication, what would I be doing? Exercising is obviously a big one. I think fasting is a big one. Not eating sugar, all those things are super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, exercise is one of the best antioxidants that you can introduce with your body. And it's all about integrating all these different modalities. I mean, when I used to work in the dispensary and somebody would come in and they would have either first got diagnosed with cancer or they were at the stage where traditional medicine wasn't working for them, and they would come in and they would be like, I want to buy all these syringes of RSO. Somebody told me
Right.
about Rick Simpson, and I would just stop them and I'd be like, okay, let's stop. Whenever anyone gets sick, and people have the best of intentions when they do this, but they come out of the woodwork with all these magic beans, all these things that you should be doing. And you have to, you're not just navigating your journey with your medical team, and you're navigating the critical thought around all these people that are well-meaning. And I used to tell people, it's great that, Rick started the conversation about the usefulness of concentrates for therapeutic use. That being said, it is not a one-size-fits-all thing with starting with half the size of a grain of rice and going to a gram. And, at best, you'll just get too high and uncomfortable. At worst, you'll like overflood your receptors and you're not going to get shit from this. So, except for spending all your money. So talk to somebody who knows what they're doing. Like, I can always help people with symptom management. I have no business talking to people about therapeutic protocols, and I know my place. Humboldt Family Farms is rooted in the legendary hills of Northern California, where cannabis isn't just grown, it's lived. As one of the top sun-grown cannabis brands in the state, Humboldt Family Farms represent a collective of multi-generational family-run farms deeply committed to sustainable practices, environmental stewardship, and the craft of cultivation. Every harvest reflects decades of knowledge and a deep respect for the land, the plant, and the people who enjoy it. Now, they're partnering with Surfer Magazine and Embark for a first-of-its-kind collaboration, the first time in Surfer's 65-year history that they've ever partnered with a cannabis brand. The drop includes Humboldt Family Farms' iconic Maui Wowie flower and Hawaiian Fanta pre-rolls. You'll find the collab exclusively at Embark locations across California, and a limited number are dropping as part of Embark's weekly Getaway Bag series, a fresh tote every Friday packed with California's best cannabis. And it sells out every time. Embark has earned its place as California's most trusted cannabis dispensary, but they're not just selling cannabis. They're creating experiences that connect people to the plant and proving that it can be a force for good. They're pioneering what normalization looks like, bringing legal sales and consumption to places no one thought possible, like the California State Fair and Cali Roots. This summer, they'll do it again at Dead & Company's 60th anniversary in Golden Gate Park, followed by their 5th year at Outside Lands, with Humboldt Family Farms right alongside them. Every Embark location gives back 1% of sales to its local community, helping fund youth drug prevention programs and logging thousands of volunteer hours across California. A collaboration like this with Surfer Magazine and Humboldt Family Farms is an extension of this mission. It proves that cannabis can exist in mainstream culture, that it belongs in iconic spaces alongside one of the most demanding sports in the world. This is what progress looks like. For more information, visit Humboldt Family Farms at HumboldtFamilyFarms.com, Embark at GoEmbark.com, and Surfer Magazine at Surfer.com.
Absolutely. And I think we each need to know our bodies, because we have so our chemical profile and, our bodies are so uniquely different. And that's the beauty and the curse of all this. If we all needed the same exact thing, we'd run out of resources on the planet, for one thing. But also, like, our body chemistries are so uniquely different that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the next. My latest and greatest, discovery was mushrooms. And I've taken psychedelic mushrooms throughout my life, whatever. I enjoy that. But like literally I'm doing Rise coffee every day. And now my short-term memory is so much better. My memory recall is so much better. And all of a sudden I lost weight. And so I was contributing losing allergies. So I was allergic to peanuts and stone fruit. And I've been allergic since I was a teenager, but I've fluctuated in weight. And so I thought maybe it's just because I lost a bunch of weight because I just lost 50 pounds. But the truth is, it was the mushrooms. I believe it
Wow.
was the mushrooms. And I drink Rise coffee in the morning and I do one in the afternoon. So I'm getting a double dose of it. But I no longer have these allergy symptoms and this bloat. I think the inflammation is part of it, but it's also it helps your gut biome.
Hmm.
And they have cordyceps and turkey tail and reishi, and those are three of the six. But the six, it's pretty amazing the effects, and that doesn't work like that for everybody because I've tried to turn at least 24 people onto it, and some of them had great effects, and some of had they didn't have the same shared experience.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it. It's like your mileage may vary, but having the conversation gives someone the opportunity to see what'll work well for themselves. I love mushrooms. I love adaptogens too. I mean, there's just like, but that's also like a really rich conversation to have when I used to teach my classes, I would always tell people, much like what you were saying, we're walking chemistry experiments. We're all different. Let's talk about how to create, a safe space for experimentation, but also, even though we create our own endogenous cannabinoids, not all of us tolerate phytocannabinoids, and that's okay. And that's where you can say, look into mushrooms, look into adaptogens. I mean, I think
Right.
incorporating plant medicine in our life in whatever way we can is incredibly rich and a really important conversation to have.
Well, yeah, and it's like, Ben Patrick, he's a knees over toes guy, and I've been following along with him, and he fixed my knees doing his exercise program. And it's not for everybody, but what he believes in is regressions too. So, like, it's not like everybody can just go out and run, but maybe you need to start out with something that's easier. Walking is a great regression for running. And, it's like they even have these rebounders, like that move lymph fluid. I don't know if you've seen the trampolines, the mini trampolines. So I got one of those for the house. So I started doing, and I take deep dives down stuff. What we do at the facility, is A/B testing. We're A/B testing. We're testing stuff all day, and so I'm able to experiment, and that's really spilled over into everything that I do in life. So I'm always testing one thing against another. I'm doing a lot of research, and I don't believe everything that I read. I want to test it and prove it. And I get excited about stuff after it's proven. And usually I'm skeptical until then, because there's just so much information out there and it's hard to decipher it all.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I mean, and some of it is, I think, sometimes it's just, a very big game of telephone, and some of it is really fucking divisive.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because I see miracles, as I'm getting older. I guess when you're looking for stuff, you find it, but I see miracles happen every day. Mother-in-law just fell down 12 feet at our house over a retaining wall uh, onto soft dirt. Luckily, it was soft dirt. We have like golfers and voles that dig up the dirt on our property. And she fell over the retaining wall on 4th of July.
Oh no.
And she had a little hairline fracture in her sternum and a grade 3 ruptured spleen. She was in the hospital for 2 days and she's fine. No broken bones, no bones sticking out. Like if I fell down that, she's also probably 115 pounds,
Uh-huh.
right? But I see miracles happen every day, and some of them are unexplained. Like that's just to fall over 12 feet. That's higher up than a basketball court. It's hard to even put it into perspective until you see it. And I actually go down to where she fell on the house. I just walk down from the house and smoke and kind of that's one of my smoking spots now. But I go and look at that and just I'm still in awe that it still doesn't fully make sense in my head. And even the paramedics that came and took her to the hospital were like in disbelief. She wasn't even out cold. When she landed, she was still talking and she wanted to get up. And my wife was like, no, no, don't get up. Whatever you do, don't get up. You could have some injury and we don't want you to try to get up. The paramedics will be here soon. They showed up in like 10 minutes. It was amazing. And it wasn't busy 4th of July morning. That's the busiest day of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily it happened in the morning and all the things, the stars were aligned with that one. But I see stuff, people curing cancer with cannabis too. You hear about brain tumors completely going away, skin cancer going away. And then you also hear the sad stories about guys like Dave that passed away that really tried to use cannabis. And, he had a long, I think it was almost a 4-year battle with cancer.
Mhm.
And it just, sometimes it's not in the cards.
No, I mean that's it. I gotta say though, like going through stuff like that and really like I don't know. When I went through chemo, I almost died twice. I went into anaphylaxis.
Wow.
Yeah,
Allergic reaction to the chemo.
yeah. Apparently, I'm very very allergic to oxaliplatin. So
Wow.
they took me off of it after a while. But I knew I was dying, and the outside of my body was totally fighting it, like it was doing things that were out of my control. But in the
Wow.
inside, I was incredibly calm. And I just remember saying to myself, like, wow, who knew? Who knew this was going to be how it happens? And it really changed my relationship with it. It's like I'm really at peace with the thing that I think about is like how much I'll miss the people that I love.
Yeah.
But I don't and I want to live for like 50 more years if that's possible, but I'll be in my hundreds, so I don't know if that's going to happen. But on the other
Yeah.
hand, it's like, you just like it's just knowing that like life is life and like make the most of it and enjoy it and don't live in fear.
I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest life lesson. And you can learn that from the plant. You can learn it from life experience. But, if today's my day, I'm okay with it. I've come to terms with death at a relatively young age. And I feel like I try to do the best I can every day. And I try to, not only move the plant forward, but just live a good life and have positive impact. And I think when you can go through life trying to have positive impact as one of your purposes, all that stuff kind of is a little bit easier. And I know that I've done a lot of stuff, with my books, and I've really tried to make a difference. And I feel like, we need enough of us to make a difference to make this world a better place. And the thing is about cannabis in this space is there's so many positive the people that are in it and the people that have been here a long time and the people that will be here a long time because they see the marathon side of it, not the easy money.
Hmm.
Those people are so passionate.
Oh
They're really
yeah, there.
passionate. They're passion driven. Whether there's no money, they're the same people that back in the day, if there was no money involved with it, they would still be enjoying the plant because it makes them better people.
Yeah, there's just something about I always tell people who have never been at a cultivation that I'm like there's something just very magical about either walking into a field of flowers or a grow room full of flowers, like the energy that you feel coming from the plant. It will change your whole perspective if you've never experienced that before.
Totally. And plant medicine is so special.
Hmm.
Yeah, the original medicine is plant medicine.
It is.
And a lot of times, we think of medicine as being Advil or aspirin or these other things, but the original medicine was plant medicine and
Hmm.
used in many forms in many cultures. And I think we've been using this plant and we've evolved alongside this plant, I believe, for millions of years.
So and how did you, and I know that you've ever since you experienced it, you had a love for it. But you've done a lot of really interesting things even before you got into what you're doing now. How did you get into your career in cannabis and what you're doing today?
Well, a lot of hard work and growing, and I grew. It was illegal in up in 1996. The farm or not the farm bill, Prop 215 passed in 96. But we were growing before 96. We grew in using scripts in houses and warehouses. I didn't get into warehouses till I was scared. My business partner now, he had 12 houses when I had one house, but you could make extra money and also have free smoke. And I love smoking and part of growing it. And I love growing plants. There's pictures of me when I was a kid in a 5-gallon bucket, and there's pictures of me in a chef coat. And I've been blessed to be able to have multiple careers in different things. I was a chef. I owned restaurants. I had a restaurant. I've been the executive chef of restaurants. I've done a lot of amazing things. I was the president of the San Francisco Chefs Association for a while. And I've done computer. I was a computer programmer. I did testing and distribution for Charles Schwab. I worked at several computer companies over the years and tech companies. And I was a personal trainer. I roofed houses. So I've had this wild career. But really, in 2010, I was making seeds, and I wanted to sell seeds. I was making seeds before that, but that's when I really started kind of the push on making larger quantities of seeds and thinking that it could become a real business. And so we started out with Loud Seeds. And that was a wild adventure because I had a lot of people saying, oh, you're going to fail. And it's stupid. Like the idea is stupid and you're going to fail. And that's not like the best, the best way. Like everyone's growing, you should just grow. Why would you want to waste a room on making seeds? That's silly. Right? Because it's so hard to sell seeds, right? And the seeds is a marathon. It's not the sprint. So if you make these seeds, typically you're not going to sell them all off to one person right away. It's more of a long-term thing. You make these seeds, they're good for a really long time, whereas fresh flower is best fresh. When it's done, you have your cure on it. It needs to be sold. It needs to get out of there. You need to get your money because every day after it's done at its peak, it goes down and it degrades a little bit, oxidizes, eventually change color, changes chemical profile, turns into CBN. It's no good. There's things like Grove bags, which I love Grove. They're Terp Lock bags. They're game changers. If you've never used a Terp Lock, I got rid of all my mason jars because we did side-by-side testing, literally between turkey bags, mason jars, Muron jars now. We've done those, and then the Grove bags. And they're Terp Lock bags. 4 months later, 6 months later, you have a much better product as long as you're keeping it in the right temperature.
Yeah.
And so you're preserving these cannabinoids, and hash is different because hash ages, like real traditional hash ages, but fresh flower, you typically want to smoke it as soon as possible. Unfortunately, in California rec, there's a surplus of products. So these cultivators need to figure out a way to get their consumers fresh products while preserving the products with different bags is a great way to do it.
What do you think about vintage cures?
I'm not big on vintage cures for flower at all. There's some people that they swear by it, and the one exception is long flowering varieties like Budgelero. They're doing these some of the 20-week pearls,
Wow.
where they go 20 weeks of flower, but then some of the stuff just gets better. And he gave me some pearls, Tony did, and so I'll let you know next year because we're going to try a little bit every month, and so I'm really going to be able to look at. And I'm writing everything down. So I write it down, like how it makes me feel, the flavor, how the flavor changes, and then the effect. So I'm like writing down how long the effect lasts, when the effect kicks in, because some of this stuff creeps up. These pearls are wild because the batch that we smoked on the podcast that he did, it was a 30-minute creeper where like you were getting more high by the minute, but it was a clear sort of effect, right? So like I was feeling like a conversation was great. I was feeling like sometimes you get, you get your words twisted up or your memory recall goes, and then certain genetics will actually just make the conversation more fun and more exciting. And then you can really dive into stuff and more interesting for the person listening to it. Because for me, it's like, it's all about the person listening, right? So what are we providing for them? Are we providing good information, or am I getting so high on my podcast that it sounds terrible? And I've done that a few times. Shiloh, shout out Shiloh. Massive Creations. Him and I got really, really high. And we were smoking some Oaxacan times some other Mexican land race and just got blitzed. And it was a good podcast, but my editor just had a heck of a time with it because he had to go through and cut out a whole bunch of stuff of him and I just laughing at each other, and then dabs. I don't do dabs on podcasts anymore because of the same reason. Like I've done big dabs with Marlon, and I are now infamous. I've had him on like 4 different podcasts over the years with my previous podcast and now with the James Loud podcast. But you take big dabs and then like the conversations aren't as interesting. So I want to have interesting conversations on my podcast. So I try to really curate the flower properly for the guest and for myself so that we have these fun conversations.
I love that. Yeah, I have to be careful of that too, especially like After the pandemic, when I hadn't been social and
Yeah.
consuming, that's when I had to really watch it because otherwise I'm like, I just turn into like an owl, just like, I don't know what to say and second guessing what's going on if I've got too much
Right.
going on. But I was thinking about like genetics and how we see a lot of genetics that get incredibly popular and then selective breeding and the fact that I think sometimes when people are having really strong reactions to flowers, it's because the wide spectrum of possibilities in the plant have been closed down to like, especially when we're doing that the race to the top with THC, which I always tell people THC is not the end all be all. It's all the other stuff that's in it too. I mean, I'm a true believer of the entourage effect. And when I see like more legacy genetics and land races being preserved and reintroduced, I'm really hopeful that more people will have satisfying experiences with their consumption.
I totally agree. And I mean, we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. I'm doing this big landrace project over the next year and a half, and it's probably going to be more like a 7 or 8 year project.
Hmm.
But the bulk of the work and the heavy lifting, I think, will be done over the next 18 months with a couple different people. And we're going really diving into effect, but also on how these different phenotypes express in different places. Because I think a lot of people don't understand. They think OG Kush is just OG Kush. Well, you grow OG Kush in Washington as opposed to Costa Rica, and you're going to get a totally different expression, right? And that goes across the board with every plant. And these plants, this plant originated in one place and was spread across the globe and adapted to the specific environments. And I'm really interested in understanding these expressions more and how they affect you differently, and looking at the chemical profile through several generations to actually see what's happening with the plant and how it affects people, how it affects us. Some of this stuff is qualitative and some of it's quantitative, and we can kind of look at the different morphologies and how the plant changes grown in these different places over generations as it adapts to environments.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to be learned that we're just really scratching the surface of. And then with AI, the future is so bright, like predictive modeling with breeding, love it or hate it, computer and technology is here to stay. And if used correctly, I think it can make the world a better place in so many ways. And if you look at breeding, we can breed and get results that we're looking for a lot faster. The predictive modeling that it can do just changes the game for breeders that are actually doing real work, like real work long term.
Yeah. And when you look at some of the genetics that are prevalent throughout the United States, I think that technology can actually help people figure out what genetics are specifically will thrive in the areas that they are. Just like, here in California with wines and everything, and we had the Rhone Rangers that were like, yeah, there's all these cash crop grapes, but these are the grapes that thrive in our Mediterranean environments. And they're actually really interesting. And let's play with these and see what we come up
Right.
with.
Well, and I think to a degree, we think we know what optimal is, but optimal is so subjective.
Hmm.
And the other thing is like with the rec market, and we're not talking about for medicine or drug discovery. If we're talking about the rec market, from one week to the next, what's popular today might not be popular next week, might not be popular in 6 months or a year. We're on to the latest and greatest. We have this thing with instant gratification in America, especially, that's kind of transitioned everywhere around the world, but like we want the latest and greatest now. And the second something's slightly different, you get excited about. And so we follow these trends. It bottlenecks us into these things like gelatos, these candy flavors, and away from some of these other more interesting things. And the plant is so diverse. There's more cultivated varieties of cannabis than any other plant species on this planet, right? And so we're looking in California, most people are just focused on a small percentage of the gene pool. And that taking away the diversity actually makes the plant weaker. It's more susceptible to things like viroids and pests. And what we need is more vigor. And I think outdoor cultivation is so special, and it's kind of been like looked down upon, like it's not as good. And in the right hands, outdoor flower, especially if we're talking about effect and flavor, can be just as good, if not better at times, than indoor flower. And I think that narrative, there's a lot of people listening, they're going to be like, no, no, he doesn't know what he's talking about. You need to get good outdoor flower from a really good grower that's grown correctly. Grow your own and see what you can do compared to the stuff that's in the shops. You can get a better product, and it's so much more about the cultivator though than any one of these things. If we talk about rock wool versus soil versus cocoa, what's better? To me, it's so much more important to have a good cultivator. The cultivator is going to make a better product than any one of those things. It's like, oh, living soil's the best. Oh no, cocoa's the best. And I've seen guys that are growing in cocoa that grow way better than the living soil guys, but I've also seen living soil guys grow way better flower than cocoa. It's a fresh product. It changes from batch to batch, and you're not always going to grow a 10 out of 10. Even the best cultivators do stuff that shifts from a 9.5 to a 9.7 to a perfect 10. And the best guys are always striving for that perfect 10. And if you're getting in that 9.5 range, you're still growing some of the best products on the planet.
Yeah. I when I look at sun-grown cannabis, I think about the fact that like when somebody tells me they have LED lights with a full spectrum of the sun, and I'm like, I'm not sure that I agree with that, but if you're a good grower, you can do amazing things indoors. But sun-grown cannabis, I feel like if it's done well, you're the terpenes are the way that plants communicate and their reactions to things. And so when you have plants that are being naturally stressed by the environment, I feel like it brings forth so much more richness in flavor if done well. And I don't think people
Right.
like understand sometimes why a lot of these molecules are active in the plant besides the spectrum of feel, like why it is that they express themselves and how they express themselves.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
Yeah, and I mean indoor, I prefer HPS flower typically over LED flower, especially for flavor. And then HPS with LED under canopies, we're using Faven under canopies and old school Gavitas and doing trials against new LED lights, and I'm getting better results as far as flavor. The look of the stuff that's in the LED maybe better looks, the yields are a little bit higher, but I feel like if you're all about the flavor and the effect is interesting on both of them, you're getting decent effects. That's very cultivar specific, in those when we're trialing them. But like, I really like the HPS lights too, and they're going to be going away in California, and we're looking at something that's better. But really, if we could get into the mixed light is the future of this industry, where you're going with a greenhouse that has supplemental lighting. It's a cheaper product to produce. And in some ways, you're getting the best of both worlds because you get the sun and then you get the control of the light and the control of the environment. With outdoor, you're at the mercy of the elements. Whereas if you look at a greenhouse, and some of these greenhouses are more expensive than indoor grows. A lot of people don't understand that. If you get a real good glass greenhouse, like these Dutch greenhouse, like the Venlos, you can spend more per square foot than you can on an indoor grow. And, some of them have heated floors and you can fully control the environment, but you're allowing the sun to do some of the work, which saves some of the money. Now, doing the ROI on some of these things is wild, especially as you go to scale, how long it can take to pay the greenhouse off and all the equipment, and especially with the price dropping. which I
Yeah.
don't think is going to be that way forever. I think the price is going to go back up. It has to. Everything goes in waves, and when it's bad, people think it's going to be bad forever. But I don't feel that way. This is the plant's not going away, and we're getting more consumers every day. The problem is there's too many producers producing mediocre quality flower. So unfortunately, some of those people have to go away, and it's a hard truth. But if you're not in the top percentile of quality, you're gonna suffer, and more than likely you're gonna go away. So if you're not in that, you need to really look at yourself like, do I want to continue on this and try to improve myself to get to that point? And the beauty for me is it all starts with genetics, right? So I can help people get there with genetics, right?
Hmm.
But it's so much more than just the genetics, right? If you don't have the genetics, you lose no matter what. If you have the genetics plus you have the skills to grow the quality, you're good. You're good. And there's a future for you. The future, people are welcoming the future because they want good flower. The world needs more good flower, and they need more good consumables that's fresh. The distribution chain is a little screwed up in California because we need a fresh product that's very fresh. You don't want to smoke a pre-roll that's 6 months old,
Right.
right? And so I honestly think a week is optimal, but like up to a month is max. After a month, you shouldn't be smoking that pre-roll if it's a month old. And it's really hard to get it from the cultivation to the consumer in a month's time. There's so much that goes on and that people don't understand. It's not like you just call up the farm and go, "Hey, I need 20 joints, or I need 1,000 joints for this week," or whatever it is. There's so many steps and so much testing that's involved with going through, and paperwork and timing. And if you're going through distributors and working off their orders, and if you're not going direct farm to table, it makes it a lot tougher. So,
Yeah.
which leads me into another fun conversation
Uh-huh.
about farms and farm to table. I think that is something that we need more of. We need the winery model. You have breweries where you get to do the tastings at the breweries, you get the tasting and the tours, and we need more of that in California. I think dialing in some of these guys, these legacy growers that have these amazing farms, and being able to have consumption on site and consumption lounges. I know we're allowed to do consumption lounges, but it hasn't really translated into having them at the farms yet. But that's something necessary to save this plant and save these farmers, right? I
Oh,
think especially
absolutely.
save the quality.
Yeah, and it creates an opportunity for direct to consumer right there as far as sales too, which, we got to turn people on to these farms and the stories behind the farms. Now, thinking about like going back to ROI for a sec.
Yeah.
I've had favorite cultivars in the past that disappear, and then I'll ask, my grower friends, well, what happened to that? And they'll say, oh, well, it was a great flower, but it was a low yield, so it didn't really make sense for us to keep going with it. What's your thought on that? Do you think that we'll ever get some of those back? Maybe, or will they be more like a hobbyist genetics?
I think in time, all these expressions that we're looking for come back. And I see old school stuff reappearing in different forms through different crosses that, when you start doing large scale pheno hunting, you see stuff reoccurring that you haven't seen in a long time. Some of these older varieties too that are just, okay, well, we got, you see skunks popping up. There's some skunky stuff, but we're not seeing that
Hmm.
roadkill skunk,
Hmm.
or whatever you want to call it. There was never a roadkill skunk when I was younger. It was skunk. And a lot of times it was called something else, but it was very skunky. But, if we look at some of like the old afgoo, or even some of the citruses, it's funny how these things pop up generations later where they were crossed, maybe even 10 generations later, you're seeing some of the expression, and it's not in the parent sometimes even, because we have these recessive traits that express themselves. Lamb's bread is another one. I've used that analogy on a couple shows. Shane Sonny Chiba, when we were down at Harborside, he had one of his crosses, but it was a dead ringer for Afgoo, or not Afgoo, sorry, Lamb's bread. And his lamb's bread was special. And I think lamb's bread to me is very nostalgic. We had one in Sonoma that was like the Hassan, the lamb's. It was definitely lamb's bread related, I believe, and people were calling it lamb's bread too for a while, but it was very much a lamb's bread cross. And we see these things reoccur over time.
Hmm.
We had the cap hiss, and we see stuff that's got a little ammonia in it. That's not quite the cap hiss, but really for me as a breeder, I want to go back to some of these original things that got me excited about flower and offer them in new ways to the world. Like we have a new Blue Dream, we call it Dream Candy, but we also have Loud Dream 2.0. They're both sisters, and one is uniquely very much like Blue Dream, but it has a stronger effect. And the other one is like Rotten Fruit Blue Dream. It's a double lemon cherry, which is a basically it's got that candy terp, but then you have the stability of the Blue Dream and that structure and the vigor and all that good stuff. And with the terp profiles, you get that runcy kind of candy in with some rotten fruit and blueberries, and it's wild. The rotten fruit one wasn't my favorite, and I actually probably would have thrown it away, but I had so many people try it and go, "Hey, I really like that one." Out of all the jars, that was the one that was gone first, and I'm like, man, a lot to do with the effect. A lot to do with the effect, and one of those flavor profiles that grows on you. Normally, anything rotten or like true sour, not like sour diesel, but like astringent sour. Those are the things like coal right away. I get rid of.
Mm-hmm.
I got a chocolate runts. We're doing chocolate runts with runts right now. We're doing a release that's chocolate times runts, and we're doing a clone release in a couple months. But right now we have the seed that we released that's available on the website, and there's definitely chocolate notes in some of them. The number two that we have is chocolate on the nose and peach gas on the smoke.
Oh,
And
wow. That's interesting.
it's wild. And so some of these things also, like the translation from smell to actually taste is so different. The flavor translation when you smoke a joint of it, and we smoke joints with everything. Like a lot of times I used to just give people flower and go, tell me what you think of it. And you can't get honest feedback like that because you don't know how they're smoking it. There's so many things now. We've been giving joints, and now it's like trying to not hand roll the joints anymore. We're looking at working with a company called Roll Pros out of Vancouver, and we're in talks about using their machine to basically, especially for pheno hunting,
Mm-hmm.
being able to give people 1 gram joints of everything. They're rolled to our standards. And so we get the machine so we can produce these amazing joints that we give out for the pheno hunting. And then I feel like you're getting more honest results back from people, and everyone's on the same playing field. So
Yeah.
from one person to the next, we're all smoking the 1 gram joint that's rolled exactly the same. We were doing a little bit bigger joints for the pheno hunts, and then I realized that we're giving away flower, and we could give away even more flower to our friends and get more feedback from people if we give a little bit smaller joints that still have a really good experience.
What do you, one thing that I always, for friends, even who have smoked for a long time, excuse me, a lot of times they don't understand about the dry hit. And I'm always like,
Yeah.
hit it before you light it up. Like see what the experience is, and people will look at me kind of incredulously, and then they hit it and they're like, they get this aha moment like, oh, I had
Yeah.
no idea.
Right. I think that you can start off with a dry hit and see what kind of flavor comes out of there. It's always interesting. And then also the translation from the dry hit and the smell to the actual taste on the palate and how far down it smokes. Because some flavors, you smoke it down an inch and that flavor is gone. Now it just tastes kind of like you're smoking dirt, or not even dirt, but like you're just smoking smoke. It doesn't have a real distinct strong flavor, and these flavors can just range so far. And you can have stuff that's candy and fruity. You can have stuff that's, you get leather in some of them. You get earth. You get pine. You get all these different terpene and flavorant profiles. And flavorants, for those of you guys that don't know, is a coin that was termed by Abstracts Tech last year. They wrote 6 white papers, very intriguing. We were calling them thiols for the longest time, but they've already did a whole bunch of research and really dove into it and said, how can we study these styles? Because we think a lot of the flavors coming from the thiols and not from the terpenes. And it's correct, but the thiols are so much smaller. They're very hard to measure, but a lot of the things that you get when you're smoking, a lot of it comes from thiols, and these are sulfur-based compounds and really small molecules in comparison to terpenes.
Well, and isn't that where like a lot of the gassiness and the
The,
fuel
the
comes from too?
gas, the ammonia, the gas, the skunk, that all comes from thiols, yeah, of flavorants.
See,
So
that's the stuff that I love. I mean, it's funny. It's like, I always say there are no experts in cannabis because we're constantly learning, and like that. I mean, we're constantly learning things. We're constantly being proven wrong on things that we think were true. And it's like, it's such a stimulating conversation that's constant.
Right. Well, and I think that's why I hate the term master grower, because I feel like this is a lifelong learning experience, right? As a breeder, I wrote a breeding book. It's 115,000 words, and I teach boot camps. We're doing a boot camp in Brazil in Rio in November, and I'm doing an Oaksterdam class, seven class certificate program through Oaksterdam on breeding, and I still feel like I'm not a master, right? I haven't mastered it. Like the term master just bothers me. So master grower, master breeder, I don't like any of that stuff because I feel like it's a lifelong journey and I'm along for the ride and I keep learning new stuff. I wrote this book and I learned a ton about breeding by writing a book. I thought I knew everything and learned that I knew a little and I understood quality more than anything, but like learning how to breed is so complicated and there's so many different ways to do it. And it's not a one size fits all sort of thing either. And anybody can make seeds, right? But to become a real breeder and to do the real work, it takes a lifetime of understanding. And all these guys want to walk around saying they're breeders and I'm a breeder and I did this, I made some seeds. Well, yeah, you made some seeds, but did you do the selections after that? Were you pheno hunting and did you select some winners and were they good? And I think learning how to grow is so much more important of a foundational thing for breeding. The best growers are really good breeders too.
Yeah.
And I think
Well,
it's lost.
On that note, what makes a truly great cultivar in your eyes? Are we talking yield, resistance, flavor, medicinal value, or is there something deeper than that?
I think there's things that check the boxes. So if it's a cultivar that needs to go to a licensed grow, is different than something that goes to a home grower because there's different boxes that need to be checked. Does it have to be purple? Not in my opinion, not anymore. I think we've go through these phases and I do like purple flower. I think it's unique. It's beautiful. But does it have to be purple for it to give me what I need? Not necessarily. I smoke joints. The future is going to be joints and carts and who cares what it looks like, to a degree, but commercially viable genetics these days, they want stuff that yields less than 8 weeks and it finishes in less than 8 weeks and yields, with these under canopies over 3 pounds of light. And so that's like the first time, if it's not in that, commercial facilities aren't going to want it. But that doesn't mean that it's not special. I save stuff for breeding. I also have stuff on the market for home growers. We have a violet drips. It doesn't yield very good at all. It probably yields half of that. The commercial guys don't like it at all. The home growers absolutely love it because it's great medicine. You smoke it and it's this floral, you get this violet floral, like violet and lavender. It smells like what purple weed should smell like. It has that purple character, but it has a little bit of gas. It's a grape gas cross with black runts, and it's uniquely different than most of the stuff on the market. And I love being able to bring stuff that's like, okay, whoa, that's different. And that's kind of James. Like if you start smoking my flower and my friends know like, okay, well, this is kind of the stuff that James is all about, but I really, as a chef, I try to look at like something for everybody. So if you look at my menu, we have a diverse offering. There's something that should get everybody excited. But I try, and like we look at stuff and I only release good stuff. We test it here. I do about 300 outcrosses a year. So we make tons of varieties. We're making tons, but what we actually release is just a small percentage of that to the world because some of the stuff on paper looks so good and it sounds so amazing. Some of these RS11 cross, I really like RS11. It was like a game changer in many ways. It was the first graded pound that I ever saw where they took out the smalls and all the buds were exactly perfect. It was a $4,500 pound in 2018, 2019-ish. And this is when it was really small batch still. Perfectly graded, almost had a pink tint to it. And when you open the bag, it would punch you in the face with these amazing ice cream, sherbety ice cream terps where it was like, wow, there was gas there. It was super complex. It was so beautiful. But then most of the crosses I've done with RS11, really finding winners has been difficult. And I feel like on paper, it all sounds good. I'm going to cross RS11 with this, and we're going to find a bunch of winners in it. And sometimes you have to go through 1,000 seeds to find good stuff. And other times you have to go through 10. And it's so individual to that cross my drips that we have, it's like 50% of those we want to keep and grow again because they're so special. And sometimes it's 1 in 50, so it's one of those things. Pheno hunting is really wild. And then if it really depends on what market you're trying to target. Are you trying to target the European market, the US market, the home grower, the guys who want washers? That's another category that's huge. Stuff that washes really well for rosin.
Mhm.
Rosin is so big right now. And the future of this industry, mark my words, is pre-rolls, hand rolls, and carts. And if you have your trust and you're a brand, a well-known brand, and you have the trust of the consumer, they're going to know that if they buy a joint from you, it's going to taste a certain way or give them a certain effect. And they're going to want convenience. In this world, we live in this world of convenience. They want it ready to go to where they can just smoke it,
Yeah.
smoke it or eat it like a gummy or these other things. And, edibles are also the future. And I feel like that's where we can take stuff that doesn't look so great and it doesn't matter what it looks like. Eventually, I'm going to offer stuff to the world, lots of different genetics that don't look good, that maybe even don't smell good, but they smoke it and it gives them a specific effect or it has a specific taste and people get excited about it and they don't even care what it looks like, right? Because they're so excited about the way it either tastes or makes them feel
I
because
was
they're
just
getting
going
it
to
in a
ask
joint.
you about that because I've had friends who have gifted me beautiful flowers that I've loved, and I
Yeah.
ask them, "Are you selling these?" And they're like, "It doesn't have the bag appeal." And I was like, "So people are missing out on this because a buyer thinks it doesn't have bag appeal?"
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, how do we educate people to look beyond that? This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all.
I think podcast is a great way to do it. I think that's a start. I
Totally.
think education is the biggest thing. I mean, there's so much ignorance about the plant out there, and you got people that love Oreos and Purple Punch that are basically non-desirable flavor profiles, and they've had their days, and there's nothing wrong with either one of those cultivars. They're one step away from being amazing. They need to be bred into something that's really good, that gives them a beautiful expression. But Instagram and social media tends to lean towards all the stuff that looks so pretty. We need to get away from that. And it starts with education and also starts with experience. If you hang out with me and I'm smoking some sour diesel or some of these even longer flying varieties that I get from Budgelero, there you go. You try it for the first time and you're like, oh, it makes me feel like this. It's not a scary sativa that makes my heart beat like where it's out of my chest. And the thing is a lot of people are like, oh, sativa does this or that, and it makes my heart beat too much, and I don't like sativas. But it's such a wide category. If we talk about equatorial varieties and
Mhm.
some of these longer flying varieties, it's such a big category that really hasn't been touched. And there's so many different effects within that. It's not all this heart palpitation and the racy effect. And some of them have like a very gentle lifting effect, right? And I feel like some of them lift you up nice and gentle. And maybe you don't need to take big hits of it. Maybe you should be taking less of it. I learned that with mushrooms. Some of these mushrooms, they make these commercial mushrooms now, these penis envy mushrooms, and it's like, man, I you only need to take a fraction of what we used to take growing up to get a similar effect. And if you eat a whole gram of those, it's over. And I do the microdosing now and then, especially public speaking. I love the microdosing, the effect of it. As I'm going on, I feel like it opens me up and connects me with the crowd. And so there's those things. Going off on a tangent here, but back to cannabis and sativas and effects, I think education is the big thing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I know I was one of those people who used to think, oh, sativas don't do well with my body. And then, I had lamb's bread the first time and I was like, wow, this is giving me a nice lift. It's super creative. I'm not clinging to the ceiling. I'm not second guessing everything that I'm saying. I'm really digging this. Like there's something for everybody in the whole spectrum of feel.
Yeah, and the piff is another one. I feel like that's another one that lifts if it's grown right. My buddy grew it, organic living soil, crushed it a couple years ago, and I got some of that, and I was like addicted to wanting to smoke that all the time because of the way it was making me feel. I would smoke it in the morning, and I wasn't having problems with meetings or anything like that with remembering stuff. I was super sharp with it, and I drink a lot of coffee with my flower. I do the Rise mushroom coffee, now, but I do that and I smoke, and the coffee kind of balances out the tiring effects of smoking where you get tired and all these other things. But with that, I didn't need coffee and I was super awake and super sharp. And I really loved the way it kind of just lifted me up and there wasn't a crash from it. Some of these fast flying varieties, they get you really high really quickly and then they crash. And that's the one thing I see with rosin as opposed to traditional hash. That's another, conversation I love to talk about is like the rosin really, you get lifted up really fast, you get really high really quickly, and then it comes down and you crash from it relatively quickly. Whereas some of these hash varieties, they last a really long time. The effects, you don't get as high necessarily from smoking them right away, but the high lasts a lot longer and there's less of a crash. And I have a huge hash collection, so you'll have to come over sometime. You guys got to come over, check out the hash collection. I've got 75 different types of hash in my collection of different things, and you can just try one thing to the next. And it's like there's so many different effects within that too. I believe the terpene hashishanine, which was coined by Frenchy Cannoli, you can really experience that in some of the aged hash.
I love that. It's when we were at the Dabadoo in Oakland, I was sitting next to these two younger dudes. It was me, Jimmy, and Ellen. And when the Temple Balls came out, these guys had like their little rigs. They didn't know what the hell to do. And so I was explaining to them like what the Temple Balls were. Of course, I was kind of high, so I got a little passionate, and I had Ellen practically rolling on the ground laughing because I was like, it's a living thing. Because I was thinking about like the time that I sat down with Frenchie and he like cracked open a Temple Ball and he's like, smell this. He's like, as it's exposed to the air, it's going to change. This is a living, breathing thing. Like,
Yeah.
Pay attention to this. And so I was doing this to them and I was like, no, this is how you smoke it. And it's like, Ellen's like, get a little intense there, sis. But it was just like, you just like I want to share that with people so that they understand that. Because yeah, rosin is lovely, but when you get into like the hashes, they're so gorgeous.
I love rosin too. I think rosin's amazing, and I love the flavor of rosin.
Same.
But 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to go for the piatella. My friends make piatella, and so I'm blessed to have friends that love R&D as much as I do, and they'll try making different things. So we've like made all these different hashes. Not me personally, but my friends have made all these different hashes in this trial and error experiment. I'm like, okay, what can we do with hash? What can we do with the byproducts? Right. Mm-hmm. So like as a byproduct, can we make something that's consumable that people will enjoy and they'll buy and they'll want to keep revisiting? Is it something that's just a quick one and done where like they're like, oh, it was cool, but I'm not going to buy that again, And I think the market in California is pretty interesting, and the understanding of stuff is definitely growing. We have a more intelligent market than we ever had. Slowly but surely, with education and through experience, the market becomes more mature and they want different things. And some of these hash varieties, they're going to be around for a long time. Piatella is something that excites me a lot, which is basically aged under pressure. And 2 months later, you can take it and make it rosin, and your rosin's good. You do a cold cure on it, you're good to go in a couple weeks. The piatella, you basically take it, that bubble hash, and instead of pressing it, you put it in a bag, you vacuum seal it or put it in a jar, and it off gases, creates pressure, and then you let it sit out for about 2 months. I have some that's now 4 months, and it's just amazing. And the effect is really great, but also the flavor, if you do hash holes, is spectacular, especially with things like candy that, like the Skittles is really changing into something different than I would have ever thought Skittles could be, where I'd enjoy it that much. But it's like a hashy Skittles. You still get the Skittles flavor, the candy, it's more subtle. Mm-hmm. And then there's more of a hash flavor, but the effect is just really, really, really nice.
I love that. I can't believe we're at an hour. Every time that we talk, I could talk to you all day, but as we're wrapping up, what are some things that you're excited and hopeful about?
Um, I'm excited about all of it. I mean, I'm just excited about this industry pushing forward. For me, myself personally, I'm excited about the clones that I'm selling online. We're doing a lot of clone sales. So we're going direct to consumer with clones, taking credit cards. It's been a blast. It actually worked. We were like crossing our fingers, praying that this was going to work, and now it's working really well. I'm doing a lot of projects. We got a review show. I'm excited about that taking off as good as my podcast has. Boot camps, we're doing one in Brazil. If that goes well, we'll do one in Germany. Germany Mary Jane is the best event. So if you haven't gone to Mary Jane in Berlin, it is the best event I've ever been to. It's like a combination of Spanibus, MJ Biz, old school High Times Cannabis Cups, all of it put together in 100,000 people under one space. And I love Spanibus for meeting all my friends, but now Spanibus is no longer in Barcelona. So
I know.
you want to find me in Europe, you're going to see me at Mary Jane. We're going to have clones next year at Mary Jane for the European population. So people that want clones. I'm working with a guy in Italy, and we're going to crush the clones out there. And I'm super excited. We're going to have very affordable clones for Mary Jane Berlin so that people have access to my genetics. Because I think access is so important. And if you look at what we do, it's like we don't price out anybody. There's something for everybody. We have something that's very affordable, and then we have other stuff that's very, very expensive. And I feel like everyone deserves access, and it starts with genetics.
Yeah, it does. It does. A little bird told me there may be a Spanibus reboot with the social clubs in Barcelona. So I'm wondering.
This is true. I believe they are going to do the Spanibus week with all the social clubs. So you'll get an experience. Without the big expo, you're going to get the experience of Spanibus, which is nice. I love Barcelona anyway, so I'm going to continue going to Barcelona. I have some of my best friends in the whole world are in Barcelona. And so I get to visit them but it won't be the same. And I don't mind if it's not during the Spanish week. I'm going to go there anyway because of the good food.
Yeah.
And I like when the weather's a little nicer than March. I like going there in the spring. Summer's okay too. And then you can jump over to Ibiza.
See, yeah.
Europe is so great. It's just so wonderful. And then Amsterdam, I have a lot of good friends in Amsterdam too. I love Amsterdam. Amsterdam spring and summer and probably early fall is great. Amsterdam any time of the year is great except for the freezing cold winter when the canals are all frozen over where you have to walk really, really fast. It's great for losing weight.
I love it. For people who want to follow the podcast, check out your books, see what you're doing, how do they do that?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at James Loud. The podcast is called the James Loud Podcast. It's on the Loud Times Network. We have a media network called the Loud Times Network. JamesLoudGenetics.com is our website. We also have loudclones.com. And you can find me on Amazon. You just look a little bit and James Loud is there. So I'm pretty much everywhere.
Thank you so much, my friend. And I'm really looking forward to talking with you again. We have so much more to geek out on.
Yeah, this is part 1 of 7.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on the show today. A lot of fun. I love talking to you. So this was great. We'll have to get you on my podcast again or have you come out and do a review of something with me for the review show. Also, I'm doing a cooking show. I didn't mention, don't tell anybody, but we're doing a cooking show. Oh. It's called Omakase. And we're doing weed and food pairings. So basically, I bring my genetics out. We either smoke a dab or we smoke a joint or we consume it in some way. And then I do food pairings with the flower, right? And so we'll do these different pairings. And we got special guest chefs and special guests. And we built this commercial kitchen at the facility specifically for this food show. But don't tell anybody about it.
Your secret's safe with me.
Yeah, and your audience. Okay? Make sure you guys don't tell anybody about it. Thank you.
Thank you, my friend. Until next time.
Absolutely.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Payan on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher, Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.